All right, let's talk about something that for years was basically radioactive to investors, an energy source a lot of people thought was on its way out, but all of a sudden it is roaring back into the spotlight. So today we're going to dig into the absolutely surprising revival of nuclear energy.
Okay, let's just start with a number that makes you stop and stare. $2.2 trillion. That is what Morgan Stanley is now forecasting for new investment in nuclear by 2050. And the really wild part? That prediction is a 50% jump from what they were thinking just a little while ago. It feels like the entire conversation has flipped overnight.
And if you want to see just how dramatic this turnaround is, just look at this. I mean, a few years back, especially after Fukushima, you couldn't get top asset managers to touch nuclear power. But today, well, less than 3% of them explicitly rule it out. So for a whole lot of mainstream investors, nuclear is now a more acceptable bet than alcohol, tobacco, or even gambling. So how on earth did we get here?
Well, beyond the obvious drivers like fighting climate change and shoring up energy security, a brand new and incredibly thirsty customer has walked into the room and completely changed the game. And that customer is artificial intelligence.
Look, we all know AI and data centers are total power hogs, but it's not just about how much electricity they use. The really crucial part is their need for a perfectly stable, 24/7, never-goes-down supply. For a data center, even a blip, a single second of downtime can be a catastrophe. And it's this demand for absolute, rock-solid reliability that is creating a new killer app for nuclear power. And this has created something that people are now calling the nuclear premium. You've got major tech companies, think Amazon and Microsoft, who are now willing to pay an extra $30 to $70 per megawatt hour just to lock in long-term contracts for the kind of guaranteed, always-on, zero-carbon power that really only nuclear can provide. They're not just buying electricity anymore, they're buying certainty.
Here's a fantastic way to think about it. Natural gas is kind of like energy takeout. It's fast, it gets the job done right now, but the prices can go all over the place and you've still got carbon emissions. Nuclear power, though, that's like building a professional-grade kitchen in your own home. Yeah, the upfront cost is huge, but once it's built, you have a source of incredibly dense, stable, and totally zero-carbon energy for decades to come. And if you're a data center that absolutely cannot go dark, that home kitchen is worth every single penny.
But this whole revival, it's about more than just tech companies in the US. This is a fundamental shift that is literally reshaping the geopolitical map of who produces and exports energy all across the globe.
So, for years, if you wanted a new reactor built, you were probably calling the incumbents, China and Russia. They dominated the market. But now, that game is changing. South Korea has burst onto the scene as a major challenger. They're actually forecast to grab nearly 40% of the export market. And at the same time, you've got a resurgent Japan restarting its own plants and becoming a key exporter of critical parts.
But it's not just the players that are changing. The tech itself is evolving, and fast. Right now, most of the buzz you hear is about small modular reactors, or SMRs. But honestly, that's just the beginning of the story. The market might actually be a little too focused on them.
This shows you what's really happening. While the West is talking a lot about next-gen SMRs, China has already brought the world's first commercial fourth-generation reactor online. That's a design all about better safety and efficiency. And they're not stopping there. They're already pushing even further, testing a potential revolution in the fuel itself, thorium.
So, what is thorium, and why is it such a huge deal? Well, think of it as a massive upgrade for nuclear fuel. First, it's way more abundant in the Earth's crust than uranium. Second, the waste it produces is radioactive for a much shorter period of time. And crucially, the physics of its reaction make it incredibly difficult to turn into a weapon, which has always been a major concern with nuclear power. It is potentially a total game changer.
Okay, but all of this incredible demand, all this new investment, all this amazing new technology, it all hinges on one critical thing: the fuel. For all the excitement about this nuclear revival, the whole system depends on a surprisingly fragile supply chain for uranium.
And this brings us right to the central conflict of this entire story. You've got dozens of countries pledging to triple their nuclear capacity, AI data centers popping up everywhere. So the big question is, will there actually be enough uranium to fuel this renaissance?
So here's the core problem in a single chart. Demand, right? It's just skyrocketing thanks to AI and climate goals. But supply? It's struggling to keep up. Reopening a dormant uranium mine isn't like flipping a switch. It's a slow, complex process that can take years, and that's creating a massive gap.
But here's the kicker. Even if we could magically snap our fingers and mine all the uranium we need tomorrow, there's another, less obvious bottleneck in the system, one that poses an even bigger geopolitical risk. And that bottleneck is processing.
Let's break down the supply chain real quick. After you mine the raw ore, it has to be processed, converted, and enriched before it can be used as fuel. And that critical middle step, that's where the problem is. A huge chunk of the world's processing capacity is controlled by Russia. So even if you have plenty of raw uranium, you can't make fuel. It's like having mountains of wheat but no flour mills.
So, when you pull it all together, the AI demand, the new tech, the geopolitical race, and these huge supply chain problems, you realize this nuclear revival is about so much more than just engineering. It's a test, really. It's a kind of social experiment in our collective ability to trust really complex technology, to have the patience for these massive long-term projects, and to hold on to a shared vision for the future.
And that really just leaves us with a final, pretty fundamental question. As we try to power this more advanced and hopefully sustainable world, we're being forced to look again at technologies that are both incredibly powerful and incredibly complex. It makes you ask, on this path to progress, what risks are we, as a society, willing to take for those long-term rewards? And can we manage those risks better this time than we did in the past? That is definitely something worth thinking about.